Hi, I'm Andrew Berry and welcome to At The Bench's YouTube channel. I'm just using my disc cutter to cut out a few discs, and I got a little bit of a tip for you when you want to punch out some discs from your disc cutter. We've got very thin pieces of copper here, and it is really easy to punch out nice small, medium and large size discs using some fairly thin pieces of metal. Very easily do. We can just pop that into place, put a equal packing piece on the opposite side. That's so the punch goes through straight and not at a slight angle, which could actually damage the cutting face. Not many people mention that. People mention about putting a shim on the opposite side, but don't really tell you why. So we can punch out a disc, no trouble at all. A bit of a cloth on my bench. I don't have a little neoprene sheet. Heavy hammer, come along, tap it, no problem at all. There's our disc. Okay, nice and easy. But what happens if you really want to punch out a really thick disc? I've got a little bit of silver here, bit of scrap, and I'm just cutting out some little round discs for a particular project on At The Bench, which is our online training jewellery website, atthebench.com. And I've got a very heavy, I think it's like a 3 pound, I think, hammer, brass hammer, which is absolutely brilliant for knocking through the punch into the disc cutter. But this is 1.5 millimeters thick. Now, I know I've got a bench here, and really you should be doing this on a lot sturdier bench, perhaps even sort of like a tree trunk stump. And really giving it a good old wallop with your hammer. But I don't like to keep doing repeated bashes all the time to try and get that bit of metal through the disc cutter. Now, what can I do? How am I going to be able to punch out a disc out of this piece of silver? And I've done this with, I think the thickest piece of material that the companies recommend is around about 2 millimeters thick, although I've only ever done that once on a nice thick gold disc on quite a large piece, and that worked really well with the technique that I'm going to show you now. So let's pop into the front studio, and I'm going to show you 2 ways that we're going to be able to punch out a really heavy disc. This hammer, although it's 3 pound in weight, it does a good job. It's not going to do the job that I want it to do. So let's just quickly pop into the front studio and set up the cameras in there. In our front studio now, and the 2 methods that we're going to be able to use to punch out a round disc from this 1.5 millimeter thick piece of silver are using the hydraulic press. This is a 20-ton hydraulic press from Kevin Potter. Any hydraulic press will do. But not everybody has access or can afford to have one of these shipped. They are quite an expensive piece of equipment, especially if you're just punching out discs. So the other piece of equipment that most people have is a nice big vise like this. This is a simple 4-inch vise. This is a simple 4-inch vise that will do exactly the same job. So we're not actually physically hitting it with a hammer, we are simply compressing the punch into the hole and through. And I'll show you quickly how to do it on the hydraulic press, but I'll actually use the vise for this particular project. The cutter, you do have to make sure that you just put a little bit of lubrication on the cutting edge, always advisable. And as I said in the other room, it is advisable to make sure that you put the same thickness metal in really on both sides, so you even out the plates. If the top plate is slightly at an angle, well then the punch is going to go in slightly at an angle and it's not going to correspond with the hole underneath. You're going to damage the disc cutter, you're going to damage the punch. So don't do that. What you need to do is get the same thickness metal, and that's going to go down to that hole there. So I'm going to put my metal in, and on the opposite side to where I'm going to punch out, I've got a little piece of scrap that I've taken off this, and I'm going to put it onto the other side and in between the plates as well. And that's going to even out the top plate. So the the punch will go straight the way through. This is a cracking one. This one again is a Durston disc cutter. Again, other brands are available. And we've put the supplied wax cutting lube along the edge, put it into the hole, we tighten the nut down, turn it with the Allen key or the spanner, and we can put it into our hydraulic press. I've got a bit of aluminium on the bottom to protect the press, put it into the top. Now you must remember that everything has to be exactly in line with the press. Make sure that when you push the punch, it is central through the center of the machine here, and also it has to be central this way as well. So you need to align up that punch to make sure, just so the fact that when you start to pump up the lower platen, that isn't going to be wonky and force the punch to one side as well. And also it stops anything from springing out as well. Always wear safety glasses when using this type of machinery as well. That's nice and central. I've got another block to go on the top as well. That is going to protect the finish of my top plate. And then you just simply pump. As you pump away, that'll go through. Keep pump, keep pump, keep pump. You'll hear a snap, like a bang, which means the punch has gone through the silver. Keep pumping a couple of times until it goes nice and loose. Take out the disc cutter, job done. I'm going to show you how to do it in the vise. So let's take out that plate. All right, the same thing. You need to make sure that the disc cutter is going to be central in the jaws, both horizontally and vertically as well, because again, you want to have an even amount of pressure coming in. You don't want it coming one side and the jaws pushing it and the punch goes through at a wonky angle. So put our disc cutter in place. So it's central down the middle of the vise. It's also going to be central on the jaws as well. Put that into place. Like that, lovely. And all we have to do now is simply turn the handle until the punch goes in. What you must make sure is that you do hold on to the disc cutter, because as soon as you pop through the metal, there'll be no resistance on that disc cutter, and the disc cutter will drop and it'll fall off onto your floor. How do I know? It's landed on my foot once before, and I've never forgotten since. So we need to turn the handle. It's going to be quite stiff initially. And then what you'll hear is perhaps one or two little bangs, and that's the punch being forced all the way through, or not in this case. Go through, hold on to the disc cutter, because then as soon as it goes through, there we go, it drops. And that was my little disc. And there we've got our small little disc, 1.5mm thick, perfectly stamped out. So you don't have to stand there with a big hammer walloping the punch through. You're going to damage your disc cutter, and I wouldn't want you to do that, because these disc cutters are not cheap, so it pays to look after your equipment. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this film, please give me a thumbs up, have a like. Also, if you want to leave a comment, please do in the section down below. And don't forget, if you want to share this film with your friends on Facebook, on Twitter, however you want, I'd love you to. Thank you very much. Don't forget, click the little bell icon also to be notified when more films go live on our YouTube channel. But in the meantime, I'm Andrew Berry for At The Benches YouTube channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.